The autumn rain had turned the riverside trail into a treacherous mudslide. But Marcus Chen didn't have a choice. His daughter Emma's inhaler sat forgotten on the kitchen counter, and the pharmacy closed in 20 minutes. He gripped the steering wheel tighter as his headlights cut through the downpour. Windshield wipers working overtime. That's when he saw her, a figure in white stumbling along the river's edge, heels in hand, phone pressed to her ear. He slowed down, watching through the rain as she gestured wildly, clearly arguing with someone. Then it happened. The muddy bank gave way beneath her feet, and she disappeared into the churning water with a splash that made his heart stop. Marcus didn't think. He slammed the brakes, threw open his door, and ran. The icy water hit him like 1,000 needles as he dove in, the current immediately trying to drag him downstream. He was a good swimmer, had been on the team in college, but this was different. This was chaos. He spotted her pale arm breaking the surface and kicked harder, lungs burning. When he finally reached her, she was barely conscious, her expensive business suit weighing her down like an anchor. He hooked his arm around her chest and fought against the river with everything he had. By the time he dragged them both onto the opposite bank, his muscles were screaming and his vision was spotted with black dots. She coughed up water, gasping and shaking violently from the cold. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, mascara running in black streams down her cheeks. But even soaked and terrified, there was something striking about her, something that spoke of boardrooms and power lunches, not small-town rivers. "Are you insane?" she sputtered once she could breathe, which wasn't the thank you he'd expected. "I had it under control." Marcus let out a shocked laugh, still catching his own breath. "Lady, you were drowning." She tried to stand, stumbled, and he caught her elbow. That's when he noticed the blood seeping through her torn sleeve, and the way she couldn't put weight on her left ankle. "We need to get you warm into a hospital," he said, already calculating how much this would delay getting Emma's inhaler. "My truck's across the river, but there's an old hunting cabin about half a mile up the trail." She looked at him like he'd suggested. "They fly to the moon," then down at her ruined Louboutin and shredded designer suit. "Fine," she said through chattering teeth, "but I'm calling my assistant as soon as I have signal." She didn't have signal. Neither did he. And the cabin, when they finally reached it after her limping against him the whole way, was exactly as rustic as he'd remembered from his teenage years. One room, a fireplace, a dusty couch, and not much else. He got the fire going while she stood dripping on the wooden floor, arms wrapped around herself, shivering so hard her teeth clacked together. "You need to get out of those wet clothes," Marcus said, pulling into an old blanket from a chest in the corner. "You could go into hypothermia." She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time, taking in his soaked flannel shirt, his work-worn hands, the scar above his eyebrow from a childhood accident. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed, a real laugh that transformed her whole face. "Will you stay if I undress?" she asked. And there was something vulnerable beneath the teasing tone, something that suggested she was used to people leaving. Marcus felt his face heat despite the cold. "I'll turn around," he said quietly. "And yeah, I'll stay. At least until the storm passes and we can get you real help." As he faced the wall, listening to the rustle of wet fabric, he wondered who this woman was and why someone like her had been alone on that trail in a storm. He wondered if Emma was okay, if his neighbor had heard his frantic text before he lost signal. Most of all, he wondered why the question she'd asked, half joking and half serious, had hit him right in the center of his chest like a stone dropping into still water. If you're hooked on Marcus and this mysterious CEO's story, subscribe to our channel. You won't believe what happens next when she reveals who she really is. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss Chapter 2. Dawn light filtered through the cabin's grimy windows, and Marcus woke to find the mysterious woman asleep on the couch, wrapped in every blanket he'd found, her still damp clothes hanging by the fire. He'd spent the night in the rickety chair, keeping the fire going, checking periodically that she was still breathing steadily. In sleep she looked younger, less guarded. Her phone buzzed on the floor where it had finally found a weak signal, and the screen lit up with notifications. Dozens of them. Sebastian calling. "Board meeting in 30 minutes, and where are you?" And most tellingly, Ms. Hartwell. "The merger cannot proceed without your signature." Ms. Hartwell. Marcus picked up his own phone and did what any curious person would do. He searched her name. His eyes widened as results flooded the screen. Vivian Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries. Forbes 30 under 30. The woman who'd turned her family's failing manufacturing company into a tech empire worth billions. The woman currently wrapped in his dead grandmother's quilts was one of the most powerful people in the state. Stalking me? Her voice was hoarse but amused. She sat up, wincing as she moved her injured ankle. Making sure you're not a serial killer, Marcus shot back. But he set the phone down. Your ankle looks worse. We should really get you to a hospital. Vivian looked at him for a long moment, something calculating in her dark eyes. Marcus Chen, right? I saw your driver's license fall out of your pocket last night. You're a physical therapist at Riverside Community Center, single father. Your daughter is 7 and has asthma. Now it was his turn to be surprised. You went through my wallet? Fair is fair, she said with a slight smile. And I needed to know who I was trapped with. She paused, her expression softening. Your daughter, is she okay? I heard you trying to text last night. The fact that she'd noticed, that she'd cared despite her own situation, did something strange to Marcus's carefully guarded heart. He'd been alone since Emma's mother left when Emma was 2, deciding motherhood wasn't for her. He'd built walls focused only on his daughter and work. My neighbor checked on her. She's fine. Vivian nodded, then struggled to stand, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. She was wearing his spare shirt, the one he'd grabbed from his truck before the phone died, and it hung on her like a dress. But somehow she still carried herself like she was wearing armor. I need to get to that board meeting. There are people depending on me. A merger that will save 3,000 jobs. She took a step and nearly collapsed. Marcus caught her, and suddenly they were close, too close. Her hand pressed against his chest, his arm around her waist. Why were you out there yesterday? He asked quietly. On that trail in that storm alone? Her mask cracked just for a second. I found out my CFO, the man I trusted for 5 years, was embezzling millions. He was also my fiancé, was. I called off the wedding right before he pushed me out of the car and drove away. Marcus felt anger flash through him. He left you there. He knew the trail well. We used to hike it. She laughed bitterly. I suppose he thought the rain would cover his tracks, make it look like an accident if something happened. She looked up at Marcus, really looked at him, and her voice dropped to almost a whisper. You asked last night if you could stay, but I'm the one who needs to know. If I showed you everything, all the messy, broken parts behind the CEO facade, the trust issues and the workaholic tendencies and the fact that I haven't had a real conversation with someone in months, would you stay? Or would you run like everyone else? Marcus thought about his own scars, his own walls, the lonely nights after Emma went to bed. He thought about how this woman, this powerful, brilliant woman, had been left by someone who should have protected her, just like he'd been left to raise Emma alone. I'm a single dad who works at a community center, he said. My idea of a fancy night out is pizza without having to split it with a 7-year-old. Your world and mine, they're completely different. Her face fell, but before she could pull away, he continued. But I didn't pull you out of that river because of who you are. I pulled you out because it was the right thing to do. And I didn't stay last night because you're a CEO. I stayed because you asked me to, and because nobody should be alone when they're hurting. Vivian's eyes shimmered. That's a very long-winded way of not answering my question. Marcus smiled, the first real smile he'd felt in years. The answer is yes. I'd stay. But first we're getting you to a hospital and calling the police about your ex. Then maybe when you're ready, you can meet Emma. She's been asking for a long time why we don't have family dinners like her friends, as they heard a helicopter approaching. The rescue team Vivian's assistant had finally managed to send. She reached for his hand. This is crazy, she said. We just met. Yeah, Marcus agreed. But sometimes the best things are. Want to see how Marcus and Vivian's relationship develops? Will her dangerous ex come back? How will Emma react to having a potential new person in their lives? Subscribe now and turn on notifications because this story is just beginning. Don't let this be the end. Hit that subscribe button and join us for the next chapter of their journey.